But we gotta get up to 150, which is a lot. Oh! Oh, that sucked. Alright, there's my KLR Monoshock. I'm going to rebuild this thing. Took the shock out of the bike, and I'm going to take the spring off. I'm going to put it in a vise, but it took me a while to figure out this tie-down setup. What you really want to do is loop the tie-down from one end. And that's the best way to do it. If you try to knot the tie-down, it won't work. You have to loop it from one end, back around, and then through the slot. Alright, so there's my vise. I'd recommend, if you don't have a vise this big, to just take the shock to a shop and get them to take the spring off. Mainly what you need to do is compress the spring, and any way you can. And this shock won't fit all the way through here, so I'm putting it down here on these like little things, knobs, and mainly what I'm going to do is just ratchet down the tie downs as I compress the spring. See how it works. And the reason you're doing this is so that when the spring compresses, you can have it compressed, and then you can take the collar off of the shock. And as the spring compresses, I'm increasing the tension of my tie downs at the same time. Alright, so the spring is compressed enough. As you can see, it's rotating freely. So what I did, I pried this collar up a little bit, and it came up, but then this butt thing was in the way. And I'm doing it with a screwdriver. I don't want to freaking put my fingers in between these springs just in case my tie down's going to break. But then I noticed this butt thing kind of moves. So if I get that below, now the collar will slip right out, and now we should be able to lift the spring out. The downs are kind of getting in the way. Oh, there it goes. Good. So there's a spring, and I'm going to put that aside. Got a lot of energy in there. Alright, so I think I finally got it out. Yeah, there it is. That thing was on there good. So the next step is to take the preload adjuster off. That comes out. And take this Allen screw out, and this retaining ring right here. But you could tell this shock is blown. You know, it shouldn't be able to move like that. Probably needs a new seal, and there's really no air in it at all. Allen bolt comes out. And then this ring is going to want to pull this ring out. That just pops right out. Alright. You can slide the preload adjuster off, as so. Just remember to keep everything together. That's the way it goes. And now we're going to get this cap off. Before we get the cap off, though, I want to see if there's any oil left in it. So I'm going to press this straighter valve. You can see there's nothing in there. Alright, so the next step is getting this cap off here. There's a little hole right here, a little hole right here. I'm going to just bang it out. I'm going to bring it back over to the vise and do it. What you want to do is make sure you're switching sides, though. And alternating sides to get that cap out evenly. And this is the most bothersome part of the job. You have to push this piston in and get at the retaining rings. There's 2 retaining rings, and that'll release this whole seal head assembly in here. So I'm going to work on this for a little bit, see what I come up with. Spray some WD-40 in there, but it looks as if everything is seized up, which is not a good sign. Alright, so mainly I just pushed this little piston down with my fingers and it went down. And there's, you can see kind of like the first retaining ring. There's 2 retaining rings, remember, and you got to get those out. I'm just going to pry them out. Alright, first ring is out. What I did, I used a sharp knife. And I pried the ring out right at the start of the ring, and worked it around, pushed it down, and then popped it out. So I'm going to try that in the second one. Alright, that second ring was really a bitch to get out, but I got it out. I think I was just using the wrong tools. I needed a sharper instrument, so I got these things out of the jar. They're like barbecue skewers, and they're really pointy and sharp and thin. And I just got that in there, and I put that against the ridges, and so the clip, the ring wouldn't be able to go back into the grooves, I mean. And that did it. Man, took a while though. Yeah, it's coming out here. A little bit of oil. Alright, and there's our seal head assembly and the piston. Doesn't look too bad. But I guess that's what needs replacing. Alright, so what I'm doing now is I'm grinding off the peening off this flange so I can get that bolt off. And then once I get that bolt off, I can get these piston off and then the seal ring. Using a Dremel tool to grind it off, and just gotta want to be gentle and, you know, don't grind too much off. Alright, the nut just came off. Now I'm going to take this assembly off, make sure it stays all together. Don't want to lose the order. In through the hole, and maybe some string. And yeah. Another thing to keep in mind, I've put string around the piston stuff, and just to keep it all together. There's a lot of pieces in there. You got to be careful to keep that all together in the right order. I want to keep it all clean too, so I'm gonna get some carb cleaner and clean this out really good. I'm gonna clean out the cylinder really good, and clean this stuff off really good before I install it all back together. Alright, there's our seal. We just bent back that flange. We're just gonna replace that seal in there. There's Tim. Tim's helping me out. And we just put a new seal in there, and Tim says that should be good. Alright, there's Tim knocking back that flange.
Alright.
Yeah.
Back to normal.
Alright, just a couple things to keep in mind here. Mainly what we did, we pried this off and we bent this flange back, put a new seal in. I was a little worried that like these little nicks all over were a bad thing, but I think as long as this ridge right here is smooth, that's the thing that rides up and along the cylinder, so these little nicks really won't matter. This is something I just noticed, which is kind of weird. On the shaft of the shock, there's this discoloration. It looks like damage of some sort. And I'm wondering if that's from being bent or having it been run without oil for so long. Alright, I'm here starting the reassemble process. That part on the shaft I polished out, and with some metal polish. There's still a little like divot there though, so that's right where the seal head sits, so I think it was worn just because it was running without oil for so long. And now I'm carefully putting the piston back together. What I'm doing is just taking piece by piece. There's lots of pieces in this piston head, and just layering on top, just like that. And I'm just going to do that for the whole thing. Screw the nut on, put Loctite on, and crank it down. So the last about half an hour, 45 minutes, I've been trying to get this bolt on, and it's been giving me a lot of trouble. I think I buggered up the threads when I initially took the peening off with a Dremel. So I've been in there with the Dremel and trying to grind it down and make it so the threads are a little better, but just not really going on that well. I'm just gonna have to put Loctite on it, crank it down, and hopefully it doesn't strip. But yeah, it's been an issue, so you got to be careful when you take that peening off. Alright, there's a shot of our bolt on. It didn't strip, which I was really afraid it was going to, though. Just remember to put Loctite on it. But you can get a really good view here of like where you should peen. You know, I think I ground too much off. Alright, next step on this shock rebuild is we're going to be pouring some 130 milliliters of shock fluid into the shock, then inserting the assembly, and then pressing the air out. So you got to get yourself one of these little cups, measures in milliliters, and so we're putting 130 milliliters in. Alright, next step is we're going to be putting the assembly back in, and don't really worry too much about right now about getting all the air out. You just want to get it so that the seal head is past the retaining rings, and then we're going to insert the retaining rings after that. Make sure you get rags available. And as I said, don't worry about the air right now. Right now we're just trying to get the seal head below the retaining rings so we can insert the retaining rings. The rings back in. I wonder how this is going to go. Alright, so after you get the retaining rings in, you have to pump up the shock with 150 psi's of air. And this is mainly to seat the seal head against the retaining rings. Whoa. Where we put it on, we want to switch sides a bunch of times. So the next step is we're going to bleed the shock. I'm going to be pushing down this valve, and at the same time pushing the seal head up to the top of the shock. And we're just going to stop until we see air bubbles stop coming out, and then we'll just Alright, so the last couple steps here after you get nitrogen in it, or you can put the spring on then put nitrogen in it, doesn't really matter. You gotta slide the pre-adjuster back this way. And remember to put this back in. Another thing to note is make sure that it's lined up properly. We want the eye in orientation with this. The next step is to put the spring back on. As I said, this thing's got a lot of potential energy in it, so be careful with it. Alright, we got the shock back on the vise, and we're going to release pressure out of the tie downs. Alright, there's Tim putting some nitrogen in there.
Having a celebrity dad made me feel special. But you're right, James. It's time to...
Alright, there's our completed Monoshock. If you like the video, please subscribe to my channel. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Alright, this is my KLR. I'll just show you guys a quick setup here. I got the bike on jack stands and wood under the tire. The shock just drops right out. There's one bolt up there on the top, and there's two bolts here on the bottom. It just drops right out the bottom. It's really easy to take out. Alright, something to keep in mind. I did have to use the floor jack to jack up the joint just a little bit so the bolts would fit through. They weren't really aligning until I jacked it up a little bit. Needed to compress the spring just a little bit to get those bolts to fit in.